Lynn Quijano, it's good to be with you. Thanks for joining us. The White House is defending President Trump after he said the vast majority of coronavirus cases are, quote, totally harmless. He made those comments during an event to mark the 4th of July as new infections spike nationwide.
There were no tests for a new virus, but now we have tested almost 40 million people. By so doing, we show cases, 99% of which are totally harmless, results that no other country can show because no other country is testing that we have, not in terms of the numbers or in terms of the quality.
That claim is unsubstantiated. Meantime, over the weekend, California, Texas, Florida, and Arizona all saw large daily increases in total cases. Local leaders across the U.S. are now refuting the president's comments, especially officials in those hotspots. The Trump administration says the president was pointing out a declining death rate from the virus. Here's White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows earlier today.
I can tell you as a dad and as a parent, anytime my kid even comes down with a sniffle, I'm concerned. So I don't think it was the president's intent to downplay that as much as saying, let's look at the risk and let's look at this in an appropriate way based on facts and figures.
The pandemic response is becoming a campaign issue as Monday marks 120 days out from the election. Earlier, the Supreme Court ruled states can punish or even replace Electoral College delegates who refuse to vote for the presidential candidate they were pledged to support. The unanimous decision is considered an important safeguard ahead of November. For more, let's bring in CBS News correspondent Nikole Killion and Liz Goodwin. She's the Deputy Bureau Chief for the Boston Globe's D.C. Bureau. Welcome to you both. Nikole, let's start with you. How is the White House defending the president's comments about the coronavirus?
Well, the president is now stepping in to all of this with a number of tweets that he has put out this afternoon, suggesting that the media is not paying enough attention to the death rate and the fact that that is going down. He keeps pointing to this statistic of deaths being down some 39%. And that's more or less a similar data point that the White House tried to put out earlier today. They pointed specifically to this issue of case fatalities, declining case fatalities in the United States and also declining case fatalities relative to that of Europe. That being said, the White House press secretary did say to questions asked about this 99% figure that the president threw out over the weekend that the president by no means is trying to minimize or downplay the severity of this virus and that the president simply wants to tout some of the progress that the administration is making, for instance, on the therapeutic front, and that the president believes that by saying these cases are harmless, that what he really believes is that people, for the most part, will come out okay on the other side of coronavirus. The White House also acknowledging that, they do grieve the loss of lives that have happened because of this pandemic. But their point is one that, we're simply trying to highlight the progress that this administration is making on this front. But as you said, state and local officials, especially those in the hot spots, feel quite differently.
Well, I want to turn to the president's recent messaging. Liz, you wrote about how Mr. Trump is warning his base, which is mostly white, that taking down Confederate monuments could be a threat to their, quote, heritage. How does this relate to his campaign strategy? And based on your reporting, is it working in the president's favor?
Well, I think what President Trump saw a few weeks ago is this big shift, especially among white voters, on issues of race. Black Lives Matter, for example, as a movement, only 40% of white voters supported that as a movement a few years ago. Now it's 60%. When you asked people about racism, criminal justice reform, those things were moving because of some of the protests we were seeing after George Floyd. But when you look at some of these issues on Confederate statues or renaming military bases that are named after Confederates, that issue is more evenly split. There hasn't been as much of movement on that. So from a purely tactical point of view, you could say that the president feels like he gets more leverage out of this issue, but the result is obviously incredibly divisive and stirs up hate.
Well, let's talk about the economy. Despite high unemployment numbers, one issue the president is hoping to run on in 2020 is the economy. Nikole, we know the White House is weighing another stimulus package. Where do negotiations stand now?
You know, the White House really wouldn't offer a lot of details today when asked about where things stand as far as a Phase 4 package. What we do know is that the president over the weekend signed an extension of the PPP loan program for small businesses. There's about $130 billion left in the coffers there. As far as Phase 4, the press secretary earlier today said that the president continues to support this idea of a payroll tax cut, although she would not say whether the president would veto any type of Phase 4 package if it did not include that. We did also hear from Majority Leader Mitch McConnell earlier today at a series of press conferences in his home state of Kentucky, and so he also laid out a couple of pillars saying that he feels it's really important that any Phase 4 package includes liability protection and, you know, protecting businesses and other institutions from being sued if someone were to contract coronavirus. He says that he doesn't want to see these types of institutions face, quote, a second epidemic of lawsuits. And that is certainly a point that a number of Republicans have been arguing ever since, you know, talk of a Phase 4 package has surfaced. McConnell also talked about the importance of getting kids back to school. He didn't really give a lot of specifics as to whether this package would include, for instance, more funding for schools or more funding for state and local governments, which is something certainly state and local officials have been pressing for. What he did also say is that this legislation will start in his office, that he will consult with Senate Democrats, that he will consult with the administration, and he said that he hopes to unveil something in the next few weeks. One note of caution, though, Elaine, he did say that he doesn't feel that this Phase 4 package will necessarily pass unanimously or have unanimous support as previous coronavirus packages have, that he did say that the atmosphere is more political. So it sounds like certainly, you know, this could be a bit more difficult to get through the Congress this go round once something does come to pass. But of course, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Well, Liz, the president, meantime, is set to hold a rally in New Hampshire, a state that he narrowly lost to Hillary Clinton in 2016. That rally is set to take place this weekend. Why there, Liz?
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting choice as well. There have been a few stories coming out, given the president's declining poll numbers over the past month or two, saying that the Trump campaign is narrowing its map. Instead of expanding the states that are in play, they're doubling down on states they thought they were going to have an easier time in, like Florida or Pennsylvania. And so this seems to be sort of a message saying, you know, no, we're not on defense, even though the polls look bad for us. We're trying to expand the map. We can win states we didn't win last time, like New Hampshire, which they really just lost by a little bit. It was very close there. So that seems to be kind of trying to get the candidate himself on an aggressive, positive note and send this message that they're not on the run.
In our last minute, Liz, you mentioned Florida, the battleground state, is seeing a surge of coronavirus cases. Joe Biden just announced a new senior leadership team there. How critical is this state for November?
Yeah, Florida is very critical. I think it's most critical for President Trump, really, because even people very close to him do not see a path to victory without Florida, and they will admit that. He has to win that state. He spends a ton of time there, and the fact that he's down 5 points on average in the polls there is very concerning for his team. So it could, if that trend holds, that could spell the end for his presidency.
Yeah, we know he has a very staunch ally in Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis. We'll see how that plays out come November. Nikole, Killion, and Liz Goodwin, good to have you both. Thanks very much.
Thank you.